It is the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown, and this is the Golden Hour, your home for all things insights, discussions, interviews, and recaps about all things Kutztown sports. It was a big time week, championship weekend for field hockey. Kutztown secured the East a week ago, went out to Bloomsburg, had a tough matchup there, and then volleyball and soccer all coming down to the home stretch here. Fall sports are just about concluding here on the campus of Kutztown University. We'll have all of it here over the next hour. I'm Tommy Scuderi here with you on the Golden Hour, and we'll start off with football. Kutztown goes out to Bloomsburg. They had already secured the East going into that game, and everyone kind of expected, all right, Bloomsburg 2-7 on the year, 1-5 in conference play. This should be a relatively easy game for a Kutztown team that has dominated everyone in their path. And it was anything but. Kutztown does get the win over Bloomsburg 35-27, but it was an absolute barn burner out there at Redmond Stadium. We were out there on KUR and really showed that Bloomsburg is a team that is much better than their record indicates. Jim Clemens had said that earlier in the week, saying, yeah, they are 2-7, but they are a lot better, than that record shows. They've had a lot of really close games, and we saw that was 100% the case here. Kutztown beating Bloomsburg by just 8 points, the lowest margin of victory all season long for the Golden Bears, the most amount of points they had given up all season long. Before then, it was 14 points that they gave up to both Assumption and Millersville, a lot of those in garbage time as well. Bloomsburg gave Kutztown a fight as we take a look here at the box score. Judd Novak finished the day 19 for 27 for 215 total yards passing. Threw for one touchdown, had a long of 26, and was sacked once. Jaden Stewart was the leading rusher on the day for KU. He had 14 carries for 86 yards, but he went down later in the game with a leg injury. Remember, he missed a couple of weeks as well with an injury to his leg. We will have a little bit more later in the week about the extent of that injury, but he did not return after going down in the fourth quarter, so we'll keep an eye on that. But before then, he had 86 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a long of 18 yards. Luke Maxwell had 2 carries for 50 yards and a 46-yard touchdown dash on a 4th-and-1 attempt from Bloomsburg's 46. Took it all the way to the house. He had 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. Stephen Burkhart rounded out the carries there for Kutztown, 9 carries for 44 total yards and a long of 20, averaging just under 5 yards a carry. Receiving-wise, it was Trevor Amorum that had the most amount of receptions for Kutztown. He had 6 catches for 82 yards, a long of 25. Luke Maxwell had 4 catches for 58 yards. He was getting really active all over the field yesterday, both in the rushing game and the passing game, was Luke Maxwell. Monique Preston had 5 catches for 53 yards. Jamin Bryant had 2 catches for 28. Noah Grisilla, 1 catch for 16. And then Stephen Burkhart had a reception for 4 yards. But for Bloomsburg, their offense was a story. Their quarterback, KJ Riley, had a phenomenal day. He finished 26 of 44 passing, so not a ton in the accuracy standpoint, but he was making the passes he did complete count. He had 334 total yards through the air, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Although the interception, it's kind of hard to put that against him. There was 10 seconds left in the game. Bloomsburg was driving, was trying to make a play as they were out of timeouts, and ultimately threw an interception along the near sideline to Noah Kenzie. So yes, it is a pick, but you consider it like maybe half an interception because of the circumstances. It wasn't like an errant throw. You got to push something downfield, got to try and make something happen, and ultimately was picked off. Did take 2 sacks as well. KJ Riley was also the leading rusher for Bloomsburg. They really couldn't get much going in the rushing attack aside from him. He had 14 carries for 37 yards, 27 total yards, not counting net yards with some sacks. Eli Zimmerman had 7 carries for 19 total yards. Declan Clancy had 17 total rushing yards on 5 carries, and then a few end arounds from Gabe Brower and Justin Wolfe had them at 10 and 3 yards apiece. But it was the air attack of Bloomsburg that really was the story. Gabe Brower had 10 receptions for 151 yards, long of 45. He had a great day. Jerry Griffin Batchelor, the number 1 receiver in the PSAC, had 7 catches for 107 yards. Jack Landis had 3 catches for 30 yards. Justin Wolfe, another 3 catches for 29. Paul Wojciechowski, 2 catches for 10 yards as well. This was a Kutztown defense that we really have not seen tested in the way that they were tested up at Bloomsburg on Saturday. We kind of went in with the attitude here, like, It probably will be a little bit of a closer game than it's been against past teams, but did not expect it to come down to pretty much the final play with Bloomsburg had a chance to score and try a two-point conversion to potentially tie things up if they were to punch it in down the stretch. But a couple of brutal penalties. And Bloomsburg had the ball, I believe it was first and goal from the 5 with about 20, 30 seconds remaining in the half. I think it was the 10 or in the game. But a holding penalty and then subsequently a hands to the face as well brought them back all the way to the 30 where they had to try third and goal, or second and goal and third and goal from the 30. On third and goal, it was ultimately intercepted by Noah Kenzie to close things out for KU, who stay perfect on the year. They are 10-0 going into PSAC Championship weekend. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment here as we continue to round out Kutztown and Bloomsburg, the box score there. Bloomsburg had more first downs than Kutztown. That was the first time anyone all season long had more first downs than Kutztown. They had 23. Kutztown only had 19. Total rushing yards, Kutztown had 170 rushing yards. Bloomsburg had 76. Bloomsburg outpassed KU, 334 passing yards to Kutztown's 215. Bloomsburg ultimately more total offense, 410 yards total compared to Kutztown's 385. But KU able to score when it mattered and ultimately secure the win this past Saturday to stay perfect. Kutztown did force an interception but had a fumble, their third fumble of the year. Steven Burkhart was heading up the middle, had that ball punched free. Bloomsburg fell on it. Kutztown had an interception to close out the game, so one turnover apiece from either team. Kutztown, one of the best third down teams, not one of, the best third down team in the country, struggled. They went 3 for 9 on third downs against Bloomsburg. Bloomsburg went 9 of 17, 2 for 2 on fourth downs, but their red zone offense cashed in. They scored on all 4 trips to the red zone. Bloomsburg came up short just once. Kutztown had 2 sacks for 10 yards, 5 for 5 on PATs, and Bloomsburg ultimately missed a PAT, which would have set up a need for a 2-point conversion at the end of the game, even if Bloomsburg was able to score. So the toughest test of the season for Kutztown was this past Saturday against Bloomsburg. They get by. They stay perfect. They have now won 30 straight regular season games. That is including the PSAC title games. So 30 straight regular season wins for the Golden Bears. That is the longest streak in Division 2. As they look to make it 31 as they try to go 3 straight with conference titles. They will have IUP this Saturday at noon. That's a 12 o'clock kickoff for the PSAC title game. It's also the senior day and Hall of Fame game for Kutztown. So lots of festivities this weekend at Andre Reed Stadium as we will now take a look at that game. Preview that, give you all kinds of predictions, breakdowns, and what the history has looked like between these two programs here on the Golden Hour Football Monday. And throughout the show, if you have thoughts, you want to give on any of our Kutztown sports, we're going to have open phone lines, something we gave a try last week. Number is 610-683-4058. Again, that's 610-683-4058 if you want to call in and give your thoughts on anything Kutztown athletics. That will be open throughout the show. We'll give that number periodically as well. Again, that is 610-683-4058. But looking at this PSAC championship game, it is the 3rd straight appearance in a title game for Kutztown. They look to make it their 3rd straight win against this. It would be against a different opponent. It was against Slippery Rock in 2023. They took down California University of Pennsylvania in 2024. And now they look to take down IUP for their 3rd straight conference title before turning their attention to the postseason. Kutztown is 2 of 6 all-time against IUP. These two squads, really, they have not faced off too much. If you take a look at the matchups according to the Kutztown official athletics website, the first meeting was in 1986. Kutztown fell by 1 point. 1987, KU lost 35-12. They lost 54-9 in 1993, 34-7 in 2008, 34-32 in 2009 before picking up their first win against IUP in program history in 2014 by a score of 44-7. They had a 1-point victory in 2015, 34-33, and would not play for another 6 years until 2021, which is the last matchup we have on record from these two schools, where Kutztown lost 26 to 29. So IUP has the advantage in their history. But Kutztown has been as we all know, has been a different team from about 2022 onward. Really, 2023 was the start of the historic years. As we take a look at what IUP has done this season, bit of a rocky season, and not a school that we highlighted that could potentially win the West. At the beginning of the year, everyone kind of thought, all right, it might be Slippery Rock, maybe it'll be Cal again, potentially even Clarion, but IUP was not really high on anyone's radar, at least on our end. They started off the year with a loss to, at the time, number 23 ranked Ashland at home, 13-9. They have opened their seasons against one another for a number of years now. Before going on a run, they beat Lock Haven 42-10, Millersville 70-24, Seton Hill 40-13. Obviously, that Millersville 70-point bomb was the most pretty much any team in the PSAC has put up this year. Then they lost to Slippery Rock 30-27 on October the 18th, and that's when we kind of thought, all right, Slippery Rock seems to be in the driver's seat here. But then Slippery Rock turns around, loses the Cal, and Slippery Rock has really had a fallen off. They got pretty much annihilated by Edinboro this past week. Of the final score there, I think it was 38. If I it was 38-8. Slippery Rock lost again, so we'll have a little bit more as we dive into what playoffs might look like a little bit later in the show. But then IUP goes and they beat Cal 38-30 to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive. They beat Gannon 26-6, Clarion, and then Clarion 45-42 to ultimately secure the West. They were down at some point in that game against Clarion, and Edinboro was up big. And despite Edinboro's, struggle to start the year, they were in conference play. They were, I think it was 4-1 at the time. If Edinboro had beaten Slippery Rock, which they did, and IUP lost, it actually would have been Edinboro that would have won the West and played in the PSAC championship game and a chance to potentially steal a playoff spot, despite having 4 losses as with an auto bid there. But ultimately, not to be for Edinboro. IUP gets the job done. And against Clarion, 45-42 in a high-scoring game. They win the West and will head out to Kutztown on Saturday to play for a PSAC championship game. And if you're wondering, what does IUP do? What does Kutztown have to look out for in that game? Well, it's going to be the passing attack. IUP is one of the best passing attacks in all of the country. Their quarterback, Matthew Ruvi from IUP, he leads all of the PSAC in passing. He is 8th in Division II in passing yards. They have a sensational passing attack, and it's really headed up by their 2 top receivers, Maurice Massey and Devin Wilcock, who are 3 and 4 in the PSAC in receiving. They also have Jeremiah Coleman, who is 11. So 3 top 15 receivers in the conference for this IUP team, and for a Kutztown team that they had trouble with too. Gabe Rauman and Jerry Griffin Batchelor from Bloomsburg put up 100 yards apiece for them. They had a lot of trouble in the secondary, so this will be a tough matchup for Kutztown defensively. IUP, they have pretty much no run game, not to put it politely. You take a look at some of their rushing stats here, which I will pull up in just a moment. They average 61 rushing yards a game, which is one of the lowest in all of the conference. Actually, see where it is the lowest in all of the conference, behind just Gannon. Only 61 yards on the ground, but offensively, they are the best passing attack in the conference. So they're an air raid team. They're going to kill you with the pass, and Kutztown, their secondary, they have to be ready for it, as does their pass rush. You don't necessarily have to worry a ton about the run. Not to say you abandon it completely, but you know what they're going to try and do if you're KU. So they're going to need the pass rush to come to play. They're going to need the secondary to play much better than they did against Bloomsburg, against what is I consider to be a better passing attack than the Huskies. And they really rounded up that Bloomsburg game. I think it was a case of Kutztown played probably their worst defensively all season long, and Bloomsburg played the best football that they've played all season long, which was why that game was so close. The Huskies, heading into that Slippery Rock game next week, they have a chance to, if Bloomsburg is not already out of the playoff, or if Slippery Rock is not already out of the playoffs, which I personally think they should be. Initial indications actually still do have them at 7. We'll see where the regional rankings have them. They come out a little bit later today. They likely will not be out during that show. But Slippery Rock, according to some predictions from D2.com and Flow Sports and some guys who kind of try and predict what the brackets will look like each week, they still have Slippery Rock at 7 as a 3-loss team. Bloomsburg, they have a good rivalry there with Slippery Rock. We were talking to some of the fans and the Bloomsburg staff when we were there on Saturday. They're like, this Kutztown game, obviously we hope to win, but it kind of is what it is. We kind of know what is the expectation, which it was they played better than the expectation, but they're like, just don't lose to Slippery Rock. We don't want to lose to Slippery Rock next week. So Bloomsburg, they have a chance to really put the final nail in the coffin of Slippery Rock's season and end any chance of a postseason appearance for the Rock. The Rock coming off a tough loss to Edinburgh. Bloomsburg, they continue that momentum. They host Slippery Rock. If they're able to beat them again, that would pretty much be it for Slippery Rock postseason-wise. And that could potentially open the door for a team like Assumption, who's currently on the outside looking in. They just lost to Bentley out of the NE10. Assumption really was controlling that conference up there. But as of right now, are on the outside looking in. Fayetteville State, another team that would kind of need a loss from another PSAC team to try and steal a playoff bid. They're a potential 8 seed. So Kutztown pretty much has the 1 seed, I would say, all but locked up in Super Region 1. You never know. I mean, if they lose to IUP, then there's a chance for some reshuffling. But Virginia Union, Johnson, C. Smith are 2 and 3 as it stands right now. They're not expected to really move. Those two teams play one another. So I think the lowest Kutztown could go is probably 3 at this point because of their in-region record and their overall record right now. But obviously, I think with a win, obviously they're still remain the 1 seed. They are the 1 seed right now. It's expected that they'll continue to be the 1 seed, the only unbeaten team in Super Region 1 right now. And if they beat IUP to win their 3rd straight conference title, they will remain the 1 seed, obviously, there. But then it's kind of, all right, they'll play whoever the 8 seed is. It could be a Slippery Rock, right? If Slippery Rock manages to sneak their way in, if the committee values their wins over teams like Cal, or over teams like IUP. I mean, there's a lot of finagling. The West, they kind of beat each other up this year. IUP beating Slippery Rock beating IUP, and then IUP beating Cal. So it was kind of a big circle there. But ultimately, IUP gets the job done in the West. So playoff time, you'd have to think, as of right now, who from the conference is a lock. I would say IUP is probably a lock. They're currently sitting at, according to last week's playoff polls, at 5th in Super Region 1. Cal is at 6, Slippery Rock at 7. Slippery Rock will probably, if they're in, they're probably going to be 8. Bentley, who was not in at all in last week's rankings, they were not even 9 or 10. So that's how, if you're unfamiliar, the way that the playoffs work in Division 2 is there are 4 super regions, 8 teams get in from each super region. Over the last couple of weeks, we got the 10 teams that were in consideration. Obviously, 1 through 8, if the season ended today, you're in. 9 and 10, you're on the outside looking in. But so those switch. Bentley, according to last week's poll, was not even 9 or 10, so it wasn't like they were particularly close. But they beat Assumption in the NE10 championship game, the Northeast 10 Conference, and because of that, they get an auto bid to the playoffs, the NCAA playoffs. That is new this year, that if you win your conference, you're automatically guaranteed a spot in the NCAA Division II playoffs. There are 16 conferences, so there will be 16 conference champions who are guaranteed a spot. The rest are at-large bids that are selected based on strength of schedule, in-region record, things like that. There's all kinds of metrics that go into building that out. But that is how you make the playoffs, the NCAA playoffs here in Division II. But Bentley was a team that was not in there. They have secured a spot. They were hovering around the 8th seed in the Flow Sports poll. And then the D2 guys, D2football.com, does a great job of kind of predicting that. They had them at the 8th seed as well. It's possible they can go to 7th, especially if they're going to try and put a Slippery Rock in. It's like, all right, you're going to make it say that a conference championship have 7, Slippery Rock 8, which that would mean it's a rematch of Kutztown and Slippery Rock in the playoffs. If Slippery Rock is able to get the job done against Bloomsburg and kind of secure an 8 seed, if they're not done already. But a lot of things between now and then. There's still a whole week to play. Obviously, a conference champion still to be crowned in the PSAC and a few other conferences as well. One more week of football as teams try and make their last case for, hey, I think we deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. Which, if you're unfamiliar, there are 5 total rounds of the PSAC tournament. There's the first round, which will have every team in the playoffs playing one another. 8 teams, 4 super regions, 32 total. The 4 winners from each super region, again, will play each other in the second rounds. And then the 2 teams that are left from each region, so that'll be, 8 total? Yeah. Will play one another in the super region championship game. And then the winners of each super region 1, 2, 3, and 4, they get reseeded after round 3 and into round 4, which is the semifinals. The lowers, so 1 will play 4, 3 will play 2, depending on, the committee will reseed based on what happened in the playoffs at that point. If there's an upset, if like an 8 seed goes in and goes on a run and wins the conference tournament, they'll probably be the 4 seed once they're reseeded, and they'll go out to the highest remaining seed, and so on. And then the lower seed travels to the higher seed. They play in the semifinals, and then the winner of those 2 games will go to McKinney, Texas, which is the site of the Division II National Championship game. McKinney, Texas is actually, it's a high school football stadium. But I would encourage you, if you're listening right now, if you have your phone out, just look up McKinney, Texas ISD and just take a look at what that stadium looks like. You might be thinking, it's the high school stadium, really? The Division II National Champion is crowned in a high school stadium? It's Texas high school football. Like, if you're looking right now, just, that's insane, right? That's the fact that that's for a high school. But the Division II National Championship game has been hosted there for as long as I can remember. And ultimately, that'll be the 5th and final round. And then the champion is crowned in Texas at a neutral site because of that game. Now, little programming update. KUR has been working behind the scenes here that pretty much we still have to lock a few things in. But the idea is, no matter where Kutztown football goes this season, we're going to go with them. Whether that means getting on the plane and flying out to Colorado like they did in 2023, whether that means, they're playing for a national championship in Texas on December the 20th. We're going to McKinney, Texas, and we'll have a live play-by-play. So that's the idea. There's still some things behind the scenes and stuff that we would need to confirm. Obviously, it depends on where Kutztown is seated and, how well they actually do in the playoffs and so on and so forth. But that's the idea. But to round out our PSAC championship preview, it is Kutztown, it is IUP, it is this Saturday at noon in Andre Reed Stadium. So definitely make sure to come out and support your Golden Bears there as they try to capture their 3rd straight PSAC title and pretty much lock up the 1 seed in Super Region 1, which, that's big. If you are the 1 seed, every game, as long as you win all the way up until the semifinals, you'll have home field advantage. Because the higher seed always hosts. That's the benefit of doing well in the regular season is, you get home games. Now, we'll take a look at kind of the rest of the picture here in the country. Obviously, we are more focused on the PSAC and the conference and local teams because that's what affects us, in the now. But the later in the season you start to get, the more relevant the information I'm about to give you is. So, number 1 team in the country is Ferris State. They have been pretty much the unanimous number 1 since it has started. They won the national championship last year. I believe they've won the last 3 of 4 national titles. They are a powerhouse over there up in Michigan. This is the first poll that they are not the unanimous number 1 team in the country. There's 31 total votes according to the American Football Coaches Association. That is the poll that Kutztown recognizes that most teams choose to recognize in terms of the top 25 at this level. The Division I FES, it's the AP poll. AP does not do a poll every week for Division II, so it's the AFCA. Ferris State has only gotten 29 votes this week. Harding got 2 first-place votes. Harding, the number 2 team in the country. Again, the go-to number 2 team in the country. Because they're so dominant. That's in Arkansas. And once I got sneeze, excuse me. Sneeze went away. Anyway, By the way, you are listening to the Golden Hour here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, your home for all things insights, discussions, recaps, and interviews about all things Kutztown sports. I am Tommy Scuderi here with you. Another reminder, we're taking calls all throughout the show, so if you have anything you want to chime in on, whether it's Kutztown football, volleyball, field hockey, soccer, upcoming basketball season, anything you want to talk about relating to Kutztown sports, the number to call is 610-683-4058. Again, if you want to call in and talk Kutztown sports here on the show, it's 610-683-4058. But getting back to it, Harding is number 2 team in the country. They won the national championship, I believe, in 2022 was the year they won it, which is the one year that Ferris State did not win it. But they're number 2. The reason that they got a couple first place votes is because Ferris State, they have been, as dominant as they've been, they've had some really tight games against some opponents you would not expect them to have tight games against. I mean, they started the year fantastically. Pittsburgh State, who's currently 7th. They just don't. It's Pittsburgh, spelled Pittsburg, not with an H, which is not in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's in, I think it's Missouri, but down south, which I was not familiar. I did not know there was a Pittsburgh in Missouri spelled differently. But Pittsburgh State, actually, I think it's Kansas. They beat a top 10 team 34-17 to start off the year. Then they go on a roll. They beat Lake Erie 36-6, Tiffin 41-34, so a close game there. 76-0 against Rio Grande. It's an NIAA school. Roosevelt 66-0, Wayne State 59-0, Michigan Tech 38-10. Grand Valley State, another tough team. They had a back and forth game. They win 38-31. Northern Michigan 70-35. Then Saginaw Valley State, team I think it was just over 500 coming into that game, took them 2 overtimes to beat them 51-46. They turned the ball over 6 times in that game, did Ferris State, the number 1 team in the country. They were down, I think it was 24-7 at one point in that game. Yeah, it was 17-7. Saginaw Valley scored again. So it was 24-7 at one point in the third quarter, Ferris State trailed. But they battled their way all the way back and ultimately win it in overtime. First overtime period, Ferris State started with the ball and scored. Saginaw Valley got it, scored again. The biggest controversy of that game is Saginaw Valley elected not to go for 2. They kicked the extra point, and then their next possession, they come up empty, miss the field goal, and Ferris State runs in for a touchdown to ultimately secure that game, which I think personally, if you're the underdogs against the number 1 team in the country and you score in overtime, it's almost the rule that you have to go for 2. I mean, we saw it last year, right? Kutztown and Slippery Rock went to overtime in the playoffs. Kutztown gets the ball, they score. Slippery Rock, they get the ball back, they score, and decide, you know what? We're not doing this back and forth overtime thing. Kutztown is probably a better team. So we're just going to, we have the momentum. Let's go for 2. Slippery Rock, they bring out a hook and ladder. They go for 2 and they win it. And they send home, at the time, I think it was the number 5 team in the country, Kutztown. Number 1 team in the region. They send them home in the second round of the playoffs. Slippery Rock ultimately would go all the way to the semifinals and take on Ferris State, where it was a close game there. They had a 2-score lead going into the fourth quarter. But again, Ferris State bounces their way back. Tough to keep a team like Ferris State down. They ended up benching their quarterback Wyatt Bauer in that game. He threw 3 picks, a bunch of fumbles there. Ferris State was really sloppy. But because of that, they did not get the unanimous first place votes that they usually do, and they went to Harding, who Harding just kind of kills everybody. Harding is a really fascinating team because they're a wishbone offense, which if you don't know what that means, it essentially means they just run the ball every play. They have tight ends and they bring their wide receivers in real close, and they have, a fullback and a running back, and they run all kinds of jet sweeps and options, and they basically just run the ball, and no one has been able to stop it for years, and they've won a national championship with it, and they've been, the best team in their conference for almost decades at this point, and they have been stopped at some point. Ferris State actually beat them pretty good, 38-7, I think was the final score in the playoffs last year before the super regions moved once again. But they're a really tough team to beat in Arkansas. They're even tougher to beat at home. They just throw all kinds of nonsense at you in the run game and basically never throw the football, which is why they're so fascinating in this modern day and age, that a team can be as good as they are without throwing ever. But they're number 2. Kutztown is number 4 behind West Florida in the AFCA poll. That is the biggest discrepancy between FlowSportsFootball.com, D2Football.com, and the AFCA. The first 2 I mentioned, they have Kutztown at 3 ahead of West Florida, and they have pretty much all year. whereas West Florida does not, or as Kutztown does not get as much love in the AFCA poll. They've been at 4 all year. But the reason that those kind of things are important is, let's say Kutztown is, the one seed in Super Region 1. West Florida is in Super Region 2. They're the one seed there. Harding, Super Region 4, is the one seed there. And then Ferris State is the one seed in Super Region 3. If all those teams go to the semifinals, right? If you, based on the AFC, if the NCAA looked at the AFCA's coaches poll and said, all right, let's just go with that, Kutztown would have to go on the road to Ferris State, the number one team in the country, in Michigan, in December, on December 13th, and play on the road against against them, which would be brutal. Or maybe if they even are the 3 seed, now they have to go to Arkansas and play Harding. West Florida, they have to go to Florida. Right? So the reason you kind of hope you get a little more love, and you hope a team like a Ferris State or a Harding drops before then, is so you can go up when those, if you make it through the semifinals and those teams are reshuffled and reseeded, you hope you're a 1 or a 2 seed, because now you get to host a semifinal game, much different on your own turf than having to get on a plane and go wherever to play a team that you've never seen. Chris has not seen any of these teams ever. You much rather do so on your own turf, under your own circumstances, in your hometown, than having to now go on a plane and stay in a hotel. And while it might be cool, like when I talked to Judd Novak at the beginning of the year, going to Colorado is one of the coolest experiences that he and the rest of the team had. And it is awesome to get on the plane and go to a place you've never been. But once the game starts, you're not playing in Colorado. It's just high altitude against a really tough team in an unfamiliar environment. It's better to play what you're used to. So, while yes, it's cool travel-wise, I would agree. I've been to Colorado once. It's beautiful. You want to be on your home turf if you can control it, to host a game there. Now, see that once you get deeper into the playoffs, you get the level of production goes up. I, for one, just want to see an ESPN production on Andre Reed Stadium. I think that'd be sick. And obviously, I want Kutztown to go all the way and win the national championship, as does everyone, right? But the reason you kind of keep an eye on the 1, 2, 3 teams in the country is because, hey, we're hoping one of them drop a game between maybe now and the regular season, so they go down in seeding, or you hope a Ferris State gets upset in the playoffs by a team that's a little easier to beat, right? Obviously, there's been no indication that, according to the past, that would happen. They really turned it up around playoff time. Or you hope Harding, which has a really frustrating offense that very few teams have been able to stop, you hope Harding gets upset, right? So now you're playing another team from Super Region 4, but they're coming to you, right? So that's why you keep an eye on those things. Ferris State has Davenport this year, to close next week, I should say, to close out the season. They haven't lost to Davenport ever, and Harding has another team that they haven't lost to in like 8 years. So that's that's 1 and 2 over there. 3, West Florida, they have Valdosta State. Valdosta State just appeared in the national championship last year before getting beat by Ferris State. They've kind of fallen off a cliff a little bit this year, but Valdosta State, they get an upset against West Florida A that brings Kutztown to 3. It's easier when you're the 3 seed. Now you only need 1 team like Ferris or Harding to drop, because now you're a 2 seed at lowest, or at the lowest. If one of those teams go down, and again, you still get a home game. So that was a whole lot I just threw out there. Again, if you want to call in and talk about any of it, Kutztown, football, field hockey, soccer, volleyball, basketball, upcoming wrestling, anything you want to chat about, number is 610-683-4058. Again, that's 610-683-4058. That is our studio number here. Get you on, put you over the air. If that type of thing interests you, give a call in if you'd like. But we'll close out of the top 10 polls for now. We'll give a little bit of a break there. We'll check one last time for the super regional rankings, which we will not get. I think they came out around 4 o'clock last week, which again is the show only goes till 3, so we won't have it there. But we'll do a quick roundup of what happened in the rest of the PSAC, give a quick preview, and then we'll take a break, and we have field hockey, soccer, and volleyball to talk about. Soccer starting the playoffs. Field hockey fell in the PSAC championship game. We'll break that one down, but they're still in the NCAA playoffs. They're the 2 seed. Again, we'll talk about all that and more. in just a little bit. But Shepherd beats Lockhaven 35-19. Cal beats Gannon 41-28. 41-21. Slippery Rock loses big to Edinburgh 38-8. IUP, as we talked about, takes down Clarion 45-42. And Kutztown beats Bloomsburg 35-27. Shippensburg beat Westchester 43-14. And East Stroudsburg beat Millersville 45-21. So that was what was happening in the rest of the PSAC in terms of football. We will briefly step aside here on the Golden Hour, your home for all things insights, discussions, recaps, and interviews about all things Kutztown sports. But we'll take a break here, back with more on the other end. Back here on the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. This is the Golden Hour. Thomas Scuderi here with you as we round out the rest of the fall sports here. Kutztown had a chance in the field hockey side of things to win their first PSAC title and finish the conference part of the season 20-0. They fall just short to Shippensburg 2-1 in that game. That was this past Sunday. Shippensburg wins back-to-back PSAC championships to close out the regular season. But Kutztown still a season to remember. They finished 19-1. They get a bid in the NCAA Division II championship. They will face Assumption on Saturday at 6 o'clock in the first round. Winner of that game goes to the semifinals and the finals, which are hosted at Bloomsburg University for a chance to play for a national championship for Kutztown field hockey. Again, they finished 19-1. They came just one goal short of a perfect conference season that they tried to cap off of their program's first PSAC title. Was not to be this past Sunday, however, as they got off to a bit of a slow start. Shippensburg had 2 early goals, took Kutztown all the way until there was 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter before they struck to answer back. It was Aaron Gonzalez, went the length of the field, put it in the back of the cage, bring it to a 2-1 deficit, but ultimately Shippensburg able to run out the clock just a little too late for KU. As they are runners-up in the PSAC tournament, second place in the conference, they finished behind Shippensburg despite having a 19-1 record going into tournament play. That dropped them out of the 1 seed to Newberry in the PSAC tournament. They will be the 2 seed hosting 7th-seeded Assumption. In that bracket, we'll have a little bit more on what the NCAA postseason tournament looks like for field hockey. But the honors came out this morning for all PSAC honors, and Kutztown, despite their loss to Shippensburg, I mean, they cleaned up in the All-Conference Award. Coach Marcy Schuing won PSAC Coach of the Year. Aaron Gonzalez and Olivia Kirkpatrick won Player Awards and Defense of the Year awards, where Tess Adolph won Freshman of the Year. So Gonzalez won PSAC Athlete of the Year. Kirkpatrick was Defensive Athlete of the Year, and Adolph was the Rookie of the Year. Tess Adolph, the goalkeeper, Aaron Gonzalez, senior midfielder, and Kirkpatrick was a defenseman this year. Kirkpatrick, the transfer in from Liberty, obviously it was a big part of this Kutztown team, was the best defender in the conference, according to these PSAC awards. Looking at the first team for all conference honors, Aaron Gonzalez, Kirkpatrick, Marissa Rice, Jessica Traynor, all members of the PSAC East first team. Grace Harold was nodded for the PSAC East second team, and Taylor Vaccaro and Tess Adolph were PSAC East third teamers. So all kinds of recognition did this Kutztown team receive for their efforts this year, and 19-1 and is certainly nothing to sneeze at. Ultimately, one of the biggest goals of this year for Kutztown was to win a PSAC championship. They will have to wait another year for a try at it. They fall just short, but their season is still alive as they head to the NCAA tournament to try and appear in their 3rd straight national championship game. They won it all in 2023, becoming the first program in school history to win a NCAA championship. Kutztown football and others hoping to match that as well. Or field hockey probably has the best chance of making their way back there just based on recent history. They will have Assumption in the opener. That will be this Saturday, the 15th at 6 o'clock. Shippensburg and St. Ansem will play at noon at Saturday, the 3 and 6 seed. The winner of that Kutztown could very well see Shippensburg again in the semifinals, which they have seen each other in the semifinals year after year, it seems like. They split the season series to this point 1-1. Kutztown beat Shippensburg 9 days ago now, but 8 days from Sunday to close out the regular season. Shippensburg answered back to win the conference title. It is entirely possible that if Kutztown beats Assumption and Shippensburg beats St. A's, that they will see each other once again the 21st at Bloomsburg University. Or Kutztown could see St. Ansem again, the team that beat them in the 2024 National Championship if they get by Assumption here. Westchester has East Stroudsburg near top of the bracket, and Newberry has Bentley University at 1 and 8. So the winners of those two games will play one another. And then the winner of the semifinals. There's only 3 rounds in the NCAA tournament. 8 teams make it in the field hockey bracket. A national champion will be crowned on November 23rd at 12:30 Eastern Time is when that game will start. Kutztown hopes to be in it. It will take place at Bloomsburg University. They're the host. Bloomsburg does not get a nod for the NCAA tournament. They were just a little bit shy of getting in there behind Westchester, but they will still host that tournament. Kutztown hopes to make it to their 3rd straight national title game, and this time win their 2nd in program history. But field hockey, to round out, they close out a remarkable season, 19-1, most amount of wins that they've ever had in a regular season, fewest amount of losses. They dropped just short to Shippensburg as they now turn their attention to Assumption at 6 o'clock. Kutztown is 5-1 all time against the Greyhounds in field hockey. They haven't played too much, but when they have, it's gone Kutztown's way. Assumption's last win was in 1999, where they won 2-1. Kutztown won most recently in 2016, 7-1. Before that, it was 2002 when they played last. It was a 3-2 margin in that one. But the Greyhounds, they look to go on a run here, start with an upset, and for Kutztown, it's get the job done here, turn their attention to the Friday semifinals, and then try to, again, win a 2nd national championship in their 3rd appearance in that game. So moving on here, another PSAC tournament is getting kicked off here. It will be the women's soccer team. They will host a quarterfinal matchup in the PSAC tournament against IUP. That is tomorrow at 6 p.m. against the Crimson Hawks. That is when that game will start. It's going to be on Keystone Field. Would encourage you all to head out there if you can to cheer on the women's soccer program, who have just won 3 straight to close out the year against East Stroudsburg, Bloomsburg, and Shippensburg. They will try and make it to a Friday semifinal game, and then November 16th, this Sunday, is the PSAC championship they host, or they plan to, or they hope to, I should say, win that conference crown this year. As we take a look at kind of some of the history between Kutztown and IUP in soccer, Kutztown holds a 5-4-1 advantage over the Crimson Hawk. Most recent meeting was in 2018 at IUP, where they won 2-0. They have an even 3-3 record in Eastern Pennsylvania, where Kutztown has a 2-1 record on the road. 2 very different programs, obviously, since their last meeting. Kutztown, the 2 seed in the tournament, one of the top 5 teams in the East. They earn a bid in the PSAC tournament and turn their attention to the Crimson Hawks as they try and go on a run there. Women's soccer, they finished the regular season 11-4-1, only 4 losses, 1 tie. And there they have 2 losses at home, 2 away, 9-4-1 in the conference, behind just Westchester. Top-ranked Westchester team beat them on October 22nd by a score of 2-0. But the champion will be crowned this Sunday. Kutztown hopes it is them in women's soccer before turning their attention to the NCAA women's soccer tournament, trying to get a bid there. Kutztown was the preseason number 23 team in the country before falling off by September 9th. They ended up with a tie, or the loss to Shepherd would ultimately kick them out there. But the way that the national championship works for women's soccer in Division Two, it's the first and second rounds will take place between November 20th and November 23rd. The third round of the quarterfinals take place between December 5th and December 7th, and then the semifinals and national championship is December the 11th through the 13th. All locations on them are to be determined. There's not like a set site that we know of just yet, like we know for field hockey and football. But another team that's trying to work their way into the playoffs, it is the women's volleyball team. They're just at 500. They are currently one seed out from the postseasons. They have 2 games remaining, and they need a little bit of help. They had a brutal loss against Westchester. Westchester, the team that is ahead of them, 3-1 on Friday, November the 1st. That would have been a huge game for them if they were able to close it out against Westchester. They could have potentially jumped them in the conference standings. So the way the volleyball playoffs work is the top 4 teams from either the East and the West make it to the PSAC tournament, play one another, and crown a champion until there's one team remaining. So Shippensburg and East Stroudsburg. Shippensburg 12-0, East Stroudsburg 11-1 have already secured their spots there. Gannon 11-1 in the West has secured the 1 seed. Shepherd at 8-4 and Westchester at 7-5, as if the season ended today, would be victorious in the East and get those 3rd and 4th spots. Kutztown is currently 5th at 5-7 in conference play, but they get Shepherd on Friday at home at 6 o'clock. Win there would send Shepherd to 8-5 and bring Kutztown to 6-7, and then it would be a match against Shippensburg on Senior Day on Saturday that they would have to take down one of the top teams in the conference at 12-0, 20-6 overall, are the Raiders, for a potential playoff spot. So they need some help. They need some match drops from Westchester and Shepherd, as well as have to pretty much win out to secure a playoff berth here. So a lot of work to do for Kutztown, but at 13-13 overall, 5-7 in conference play, certainly a much better season than in 2024. They went 1-27. And Jason Barshinger's first year, the fact that Kutztown even has an opportunity to, be competing for a playoff spot here in his first year is just a testament, to what he has done with that program. But again, we're going to leave the phone lines open here another couple minutes here on the Golden Hour. 610-683-4058. Again, that is 610-683-4058 if you want to call in and give your thoughts on anything that we've talked about throughout the show, whether that be football, field hockey, volleyball, or soccer. But one last thing that we'll do before we close things out is it is almost time for basketball season as well to get started here, just a couple of days away. Actually, this week, the women's team has a couple of out-of-conference games. They're out in Glenville State, or they're taking on Glenville State and Salem at Westchester for the MEC and PSAC Challenge to start off the year. That Glenville State game will be Friday at 3 o'clock. The Salem game is Saturday at 1 before they turn back and next Wednesday open up their season against Penn State Schuylkill Valley. The men's team will open up the same home opener. So a lot to like for a women's basketball team that is coming off a PSAC championship season. They beat Edinburgh to secure that title a year ago and went on to earn an NCAA March Madness bid at Division II, but ultimately fell in the first round there. The men's team also opens up the season on the 19th against Penn State Schuylkill. That will be a 7:30 tip there for a doubleheader at the Keystone Arena before they go out to Georgian Court on November the 22nd on Saturday, and then back home against Frostburg State on December the 1st. The women's team, they open up with 4 straight home games. They have Schuylkill on the 19th, Jefferson on the 22nd at 1 o'clock on Saturday, December the 1st against Wilmington, and then that is a Monday at 5:30, and then against IUP on December the 6th on Saturday. So tentative coverage on KUR. We do plan to cover a majority of basketball games, but football season will be in the playoffs at that point, so we'll have to see whether or not we can get a crew, over to those games as well. We hope football is in the playoffs still by December 6th. You never know for sure. So programming wise, stay tuned for how much games KUR will be covering this year. We hope it is a good amount, and we hope it to be a successful season for both men and women's basketball, who are just about a week or so away from opening up their 2025 and 26 campaign. Again, final plug of the phone number here. It's 610-683-4058 if you want to call and give your thoughts. We're on the air for a couple more minutes here. Final chance here to call into the golden hour as we will do one final check of the NCAA standings just to see if we have the new regional rankings yet. We probably will not. Like I said, it was around 4 o'clock earlier. I think those came out. But no update yet. By the way, some sports news if you haven't heard already. The Giants fired Brian Dable just before we went on the air a little bit ago. About an hour and change ago. Giants lost to the Bears in the NFL, and ultimately that was enough for Giants ownership. They decided, all right, Brian Dable, you're not our guy. See ya. Which I thought they were going to wait till the end of the year, personally, before they fired Brian Dable. But I don't generally see the benefit to firing a coach in season. I'm sure NFL owners and GMs, they know a little bit more than I do, but I guess you want to try some younger guys. You want to see if you have maybe an answer on your coaching staff already. Maybe your OC that you promote is the next Kyle Shanahan, and then you don't have to look for a head coach, right? So they fire him. I believe the Giants were 2-8 on the season after dropping to Chicago. My New York Jets are now 2-7. By the way, they've won 2 straight, which means we're about to win 8 straight and go to the playoffs. So if anyone thought the Jets were going to be competing for the number 1 pick, now we're competing for the playoffs. Guys, I'm a realist. I do know that that's absurd what I just said, but final plug of phone number here, 610-683-4058 if you want to give thoughts on anything Kutztown sports. One final check again, one refresh of the NCAA Divisional 2 rankings. Still nothing yet. Actually, do you want to find real fast what Flow Sports had said? Actually, it's Ink Block Sports, who also writes for Flow Sports sometimes. Philip Myers is his name. He is like the Division 2 guru. He goes field hockey bracket predictions. He actually predicted the field hockey brackets perfectly after the PSAC title game. So, this is what he currently has as the rankings for the Divisional 2 or Divisional 2 regional rankings. This is not official, but he usually does a pretty good job at predicting, what is going to be picked. So in Super Region 1, Kutztown still has the 1 seed in football. Virginia Union has the 2 seed. Johnson C. Smith has the 3 seed. IUP has the 4 seed. Cal has the 5 seed. Frostburg State is at the 6 seed. Assumption is at the 7th seed, and then Bentley is at the 8th seed. So no Slippery Rock in the playoffs, according to Ink Block Sports' Philip Myers, who usually does a pretty good job of predicting what the committee is going to see. Slippery Rock probably needs a convincing win over Bloomsburg and a little bit of help to try and punch their ticket in there. But as of right now, if the season ended, before the PSAC tournament, it would be Kutztown taking on Bentley in the first round of the NCAA playoffs. So a lot to watch there. But that'll do it for us here on the Golden Hour. Appreciate you talking Kutztown sports with us for an hour and listening in, rounding everything up. Hopefully by this time next week, we have some more conference champions to talk about in both soccer and football. Field hockey, or hopes to have locked in their first win of the NCAA playoffs by that point. And then volleyball, hopefully we're talking, hey, they were able to defy the odds, get a little help, and punch their tickets to the playoffs for the first time back since 2011. And basketball season upcoming. We'll try and have more interviews for you next week. Been a little bit shy. It's been a busy couple of semesters, but we'll try and get back to that As well, I've been Thomas Scuderi here with you on a radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. Appreciate you listening to Golden Hour again. It's every Monday at 2 o'clock. All these shows are recorded. They're put on YouTube, so fun graphics and camera over there. So, follow the Instagram, KUR The Golden Hour, and The Golden Hour KUR on YouTube. Give those both a follow. Appreciate it. We will now send you back to some of your regular programming here on KUR.